So our question discuss the manifestations of neocolonialism in Africa. So of course we need to understand the manifestations of neocolonialism in Africa. In other words, what's all about neocolonialism? Neocolonialism is the indirect way in which big powers, that is, the former colonial powers, masters, and non-colonial powers have continued to perpetually control Africa in terms of economic, social, and political decision making. These powers include Britain, Portugal, France, Israel, Belgium, Germany, Italy, Russia, USA, China, among others. But of course, we need to know the manifestations of neocolonialism. In other words, what shows that Africa got its independence, but it's still under the colonialists. Number one, the existence of multi-party political system in Africa, which is a Western ideology and political system. So we believe by this time that the existence of multi-party political system in Africa shows that the colonialists are still controlling Africa. Where we believe that in Africa we had our political systems, kingdoms, chiefdoms, but the colonialists brought their system, multi-party political system, and Africa adopted it. This means Africa is independent, but it's not independent. Another one, the use of expatriates from France, Britain, Russia, etc. So we are saying the use of expatriates from countries like France, Britain, Russia, where if we are carrying out a great project, we get experts from USA, Russia, and we leave out our own experts. This means Africa is independent, but is not independent because Africa still depends on the expatriates from the leading countries. Then the existence of multinational companies such as Barclays Bank, Standard Chartered Bank, Coca-Cola. So the existence of multinational companies. These are companies from foreign powers, but they dominate Africa. In other words, we realize that these companies tend to control Africa, where many African governments and people still depend on these multinational companies. This makes us believe that Africa is independent, but it's not independent. Then, foreign aid to African countries. Africa got its independence, but many African countries still get foreign aid from the big powers such as USA, China. This makes us to believe that Africa is independent, but it's not independent because it is still getting aid from the leading countries. Then the unequal and unfair exchange rates, foreign currencies such as US dollar, British pound, of course, these are more valued than the domestic African currencies. So you realize that many African countries are depending on foreign currencies to survive. That's why when someone is like traveling from one country of Africa to another country, he has to exchange the money into dollar or British pound. This makes us believe that Africa is independent, but it's not independent. Then the use of foreign languages, such as French in the former French colonies, like Senegal, Cameroon, Togo, English in Uganda, Kenya, Ghana. This means Africa is independent, but it's not independent because many African countries are still depending on foreign languages. The question is, if Africa is independent, how comes that it still depends on foreign languages? Then another key aspect, the unfair terms of trade. where we believe that the African raw materials such as cotton, coffee, all these are paid low prices compared to imports from Europe, Middle East, and USA. In other words, when the Africans are selling their goods like a coffee, cotton, they are sold at the international market at a very low price. But the things from the leading countries which are taken by the Africans are sold expensively. This means Africa is independent, but it's not independent. Then technological dependence on foreign continents, especially Europe and Asia. We believe that many African countries still depend on the technology from the leading countries. Issues concerning about the African security, African spy networks, we tend to focus, we tend to depend on the technology from the leading countries, which means that there's what you call neocolonialism. Then the presence of non-government organizations in Africa. For example, United States Agency for International Development, USAID, where you realize that many African countries are still getting aid from non-government organizations like USAID, then Save the Children. This means Africa, we are independent, but we are not independent because we depend on the non-government organizations from outside. Then the existence of Western type of education. In Africa, we had what we call informal education, but now we have what we call formal education, which is even more expensive. All of this is an element that shows that Africa is independent, but it's not independent. Another one, interference into the economic integrations in Africa. For example, EAC collapsed in 1977, partly due to foreign sabotage. We realize that the foreign countries still interfere in the economic integrations of Africa. For example, EAC collapsed in 1977, partly due to foreign sabotage. Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania, at one time they were cooperating. But EAC had to collapse because of the influence from the leading countries, where countries like Britain put pressure on Kenya not to cooperate with Tanzania, since Kenya was a capitalist and Tanzania was a communist or socialist. Another one, the existence of Western type of political parties. For example, in Uganda, Democratic Party, UPC, all of these are funded are getting funds from outside countries. This makes us believe that Africa is independent, but it's not independent because African countries still get aid from the leading countries. All of these political parties tend to get aid from the leading countries. Another one, the continued presence of white settlers in Africa. For example, Uganda, South Africa. We realize that many white settlers are in Uganda, even in South Africa. This makes us believe Africa, we got our independence, but still we are not independent. Another key element, the membership of African countries in organizations of former colonial powers. For example, Commonwealth for all of the former British colonies. So we believe by this time, many African countries still are members of Commonwealth. All countries that were colonized by Britain are under Commonwealth organizations. Countries like Uganda, countries like Nigeria are under Commonwealth countries. This means Africa is independent, but it's not independent. Another key element in this, we are saying the creation of the international courts. We are saying today, the creation of international courts. For example, International Criminal Court, ICC, where many African leaders who abuse power are taken in foreign courts, for example, ICC. This makes us believe that African countries are independent, but they are not independent. For example, today, Umar al-Bashir of Sudan, former of Sudan, was taken in ICC. Another one, the presence of secret foreign spy networks in Africa. For example, M16, Scotland Yard of Great Britain, then the Federal Bureau of Investigations, FBI, Central Intelligence Agency, Mossad of Israel. All of these are spy networks where we tend to depend and value the spy networks from the leading countries and we leave out our spy networks. This means we are independent, but we are not independent. Then the existence of Western Christian religions in Africa. We believe by this time that the Western powers like promoted Christianity in Africa, and many people today in Africa are Christians. This means we depend on the leading countries, where African countries got their independence, but they left out the African traditional religion and adopted Western Christian religion. Then the sponsoring of coup d'etats by the foreign powers in Africa. For example, the 1966 coup in Ghana, the 1971 coup in Uganda. All of these were sponsored by foreign powers, where we are realizing in countries like Uganda, Britain sponsored Idi Amin to overthrow Milton Obote. This makes us believe that African countries are independent, but they are not independent. In this kind of arrangement, we got independence, but we are still under the colonialists. Then the direct military intervention of stronger powers in the independent African states. We are realizing, for example, France in Rwanda in 1994, direct military intervention of stronger powers, where we see stronger powers directly interfere in the activities of independent African states, and this happened in Rwanda. Then the signing of military agreements with African states. For example, NATO signed with Congo and Kenya. We believe by this time that NATO opened bases in Congo and Kenya. This makes us to believe that African countries are independent, but they are not independent. So in this kind of arrangement, we need to understand that African countries got their independence, but still they are under the colonialists. So friends, in this kind of arrangement, you need to understand that African countries got their independence, but still they are under the colonialists. Another key element, of course, we are like saying, the monopoly of trade by the Western powers, where we believe Western powers have monopolized the trade. They participate in all the major trading activities in the world. This makes us to believe that Africa is independent, but it's not independent. Then foreign literature and leisure, for example, movies, films, magazines, where many African countries still depend on foreign literature, movies, films, magazines. This makes us believe that African countries are independent, but they are not independent. Another one, the blackmailing of Africa by the international broadcasting channels. For example, Voice of America, BBC, all of these tend to blackmail Africa. In other words, they promote ideas of the great countries and undermine African countries. This makes us believe that there is what you call neocolonialism. Then adoption of Western culture, like monogamy, dressing, dancing, where we believe many African countries have adopted Western culture. For example, monogamy. In Africa, people believed in polygamy, but because of neocolonialism, we are realizing that many African people have adopted those kind of culture. This means that we are independent, but we are not independent. Then high interest rates on loans given to African countries by Western powers and IMF. We believe by this time, high interest rates on loans given to African countries, the loans that are given to African countries tend to come with high interest, where many African leaders, instead of developing their countries, they are busy paying back the loans and paying so many interests. This means there's what you call neocolonialism. Another one, foreign support to the rebel movement. For example, USA supported UNITA under Jonas Savimbi. So we believe by this time that foreign support to the rebel movements, where I can say the rebel movements were supported, many rebel movements were supported by the leading countries. For example, USA supported UNITA of Jonas Savimbi in Angola. This means we are independent, but we are not independent. Then the traces in our constitutions in Africa, where we see that many African countries have adopted constitutions like those from European powers. This means African countries got their independence, but still they are not independent. Then, of course, the dominance of foreign powers over African states in the international bodies. For example, IMF. We believe by this time, international bodies like IMF, World Bank, are dominated by the Western powers. And in this, many African countries are depending on foreign powers to survive. This makes us believe that African countries are independent, but they are not